Are we going to do a quick check here, or
Check.
check, we're good? Okay.
Think we're good?
All right. Okay, welcome everybody. Good evening. Thank you for joining us here in this fabulous room here at the Skylark in Denver, Colorado, and welcome to everybody who's watching online. This is going to be a really fun evening. Thrilled to be able to pose some questions to Nathaniel Rateliff, who is then going to grace us with a few songs by the end.
I'm going to play a couple. I don't know if it's gracing, but yeah.
My name is Sean Smith. I work at the Recording Academy and edit Saddle Mountain Post. This event is sponsored by the Recording Academy, by the Songwriters and Composers Wing, and the San Francisco chapter. And we are grateful for them.
Yeah.
And we're going to focus the conversation mostly on songwriting and the craft of songwriting and composing. We may touch on a few other subjects, but let's start there.
Let's jump in.
And I wanted to just sort of, if we could, go back to the beginning and when you started thinking of yourself as a songwriter, or was there a moment when you jotted out a song and thought, this is something I could do?
Well, as soon as I started playing guitar, I started making up songs. I was probably 13, and I didn't really consider myself a songwriter then, but I don't know. I should ask Bob. He was around for that almost, I think. He's in the back there. But, I think it took a while for me to recognize that I have the ability or to believe in myself enough to even call myself a songwriter or an artist. And I think even sometimes I still have a hard time saying artist, honestly. So yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess, I think, so yeah, I started pretty young, and I played drums since I got my first drum kit when I was 7, and then moved on to guitar, and like I said, immediately just kind of started singing and playing, and then would write songs to make fun of my sister, like anything, like Pizza Party was a song, that was a killer jam, and it was just kind of like fun, and so I think there was that kind of discovery part of like writing, but then that also came along with like discovering music and other songwriters. Like my mom had played Bob Dylan for me, and I went really deep into Bob Dylan, and was like, it's the greatest songwriter that ever lived. Then I discovered Leonard Cohen. Then I discovered Townes Van Zandt and Joni Mitchell, and also my mom raised me on Carole King, who I just love, and I love the doo-wop songs that she wrote, and I love. Tapestries is, it's a hell of a record. So I think I didn't really start to associate myself with a writer until probably into my 20s, I think, even though I felt like I had a lot of songs in my heart as a young person. And not the 20s was young too, but yeah, but I think it took me a while to really consider myself a songwriter. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you said that you were having fun with it when you were young and really just playing around and learning the form. But you named a lot of really serious artists, sort of those kind of tortured kind of songwriters who we think of as having written, a lot of really sort of deeply personal songs. But you bring a lot of joy and fun in your music and in your, your performing. So. Did you notice that at an early age? Did you think this should be fun? This should be a joyful sort of activity?
Well, I think it was only fun because I was making fun of my sister. But it actually pretty quickly became a thing where it was a way for me to express myself, or a way for me, to kind of have an escape for what I felt emotionally, and sometimes I don't think I even recognized that at the time, but I was pretty lonely. I was depressed. There's a lot. I think that's part of the part of growth as a human is there is a lot of struggle as a young person, and we look at it differently now, and we're like, oh, they're having such a hard time. Well, it's just fucking hard. I think it's hard for everybody, and You know, you have aunts and uncles that die. You have, you know, there's some people don't experience that in their life, and they're blessed to not have to bury a lot of people they care about. But that wasn't the situation in my family, and so, you know, along with those situations, those very human adult experiences were, you know, a part of my very young life, and kind of always were. And so, I think sometimes writing was a way for me to get that out, or, you know, I also, you know, was just scared and insecure, and I think all of that kind of goes into that, and it becomes like a part of discovery, you know, for yourself, or it was for me.
Yeah, yeah. And were you still in Missouri then, in this sort of age range, sort of teenage years? Had you, okay?
Yeah, I moved here when I was in '97, so I think I was 18. So yeah.
And did the area around you, did the landscape and did the Missouri sort of environment affect you? Was that an influence on you? I think about songwriting in that way. A lot of the sort of Americana and folk singers and songwriters are really connected to where they're from.
Yeah, I think the earlier part of my life, I still feel connected to the land in Missouri, you know, to the spring-fed creeks and all the creepy crawler critters and snakes and bugs and all the things that are there. And, you know, the air is thick, you know, and you can feel it. And it sometimes feels oppressive, and, you know, but it certainly shaped me. And we kind of always joke, there's nothing to do. So it was either like, try to find a way to be creative, find something interesting to write or something interesting to do, or you just end up tearing shit up, you know. And that's like, or you like party, or, you know, it's like, hey, let's yeah, how fast can we wreck this with this truck or this tractor or whatever, you know, like. So you're either tearing shit up or trying to do something that's productive. But I feel like there's certainly a big part where we tore a lot of shit up, you know. So
Yeah, I hear
but
that.
but there's part of that is like, I feel blessed to be able to like have the experience as a young man dancing around the fire with people I'm still close with, you know, getting naked and breaking open the ice in December and jumping in the water, and like real, you know, like being wild, you know, and like not everybody gets to run wild, and I think it's an important part as a human to be able to do that, and we don't really have space for that or time. We don't allow ourselves to be in touch with our wild energy, the wild man that's in me. I think that's important, you know. So
Yeah, yeah, and those relationships too, and those people you're having those experiences with, so crucial.
but in the same way that Missouri shaped me when we moved here, I felt like the Denver community, once we kind of got used to living here, Joseph and I kind of inserted ourselves, and I felt blessed to be embraced by the community and uplifted in a lot of ways. That it allowed us to try a lot of different things. We were multiple bands, different genres, lots of different outfits. You know, there's a lot of, I'm still trying shit out, you know. But that's, you know, another part of discovery, and I think that is like, it may not seem like it's a part of the writing process, but it's still a part of yourself, like your own journey and your self-discovery. And like I don't think I could be who I am or write the way I am without all those little hiccups. And, you know, like I probably won't go back to wearing a top hat with like the Dwayne Allman facial hair with bell bottoms look. But it was a phase.
Yeah,
you
don't
know,
rule it out.
It
Don't
got
rule
me
it out.
got me here. So, you know. And then I think those are also like reflected the things I was listening to at the time. Like I went from the Allman Brothers influence, and you know, the Strokes came out, and that first record just kind of blew my mind in the same way that like OK Computer blew my mind. You know, when that came out in the '90s, I was like, I don't think any of us knew you could create music that way. And then Kid A came out, and you're like, holy shit, you can do that too? And then there was that time in the early 2000s where everybody was just like, would always say like, yeah, Radiohead's a big influence. I was like, yeah, it's a big influence on everybody. They're like the biggest band in the world right now. You know, it's like, how are they not your influence? But then, you know, I think like then listening to the Strokes, like then I dug back into the other things I loved, like Fugazi and the Cramps and, you know, Dead Milkmen, all the DRI and shit I used to listen to when I was a skateboarder. You know, like got really heavy into the Stones, but then there's so many different elements of the Stones in the way they constructed songs, whether the instrumentation, the way they have the 60s and 70s Gibson acoustics are like you can hear them sing, and I still love playing those on stage, and it reminds me and is reminiscent of their recordings, in my opinion. So
yeah. When you're in the songwriting mode, do you start with the lyrics? Do you start with the melody? Does it kind of come at you once? Is it all of the above?
It all comes at different times and in different ways. The melody is a really important thing to me, and I'm sure it's been brought to my attention that I'm unaware that I'm doing things sometimes by my partner. That if there's a song in my head that I'll just be walking around singing to myself or humming to myself, but I've kind of always been that way. So like when they put me in remedial classes, I didn't know anybody could hear me hum. So, but so it all comes in different ways. And sometimes it's like stream of conscious, and it'll be a melody, and I'll have a chord structure that I'm. The funnest thing is to like just record yourself and let yourself sort of like dive into whatever is there and make mistakes and be clumsy, and then come back and like sometimes there's beauty in those clumsy things, and sometimes there's like long phrases or even full stanzas that can be used, and then I just kind of refine a lot of that, and then other times I'll sit down and I'll have a melody in my head and words will just flow, and I'll just type it out or handwrite it, like in the same sort of. And not have to go back and repeat it. It's like you end up being a conduit or a vessel to something that's outside of yourself. And if you allow yourself to be open to that thing, and there's a lot of different names for it, and different cultures have different ideas of what that is, the muse, or there's a really good word for it, but I can't remember it. So, but if you allow yourself to be open to that thing and allow it to come and go as it pleases and not be worried about it, it continues to show up and bless you with songs. And I feel like I have a connection to that, or that I've allowed myself to be open to it. And sometimes it comes when it's inconvenient. And I've heard other writers talk about this. There's a great TED Talk on it. I can't remember the author's name, but the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love has this TED Talk, and she's talking about a writer who said she felt it coming with the wind and would run to her pen before the wind would pass by. And it's like, I gotta catch this. And sometimes it feels like that. It's like, I gotta get this down before it's not a thought, before it's not an idea. And she also talked about like she was quoting a thing that Tom Waits had said, where he was sitting in his car in LA traffic, and a song came to him, and he was just like, looked up, he's like, I can't do this right now. Come back later, And sometimes it is that, and like sometimes like when I was younger, I always carried a tape recorder around, but like you can't even find a Radio Shack now, so that doesn't exist, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. You just go buy a brick of tapes, and they'll just be like, But now I can use my phone and use like a voice recorder, and that's a really good way for me to keep ideas, So.
Yeah, I was going to ask if that you hummed those melodies into a voice memo or something.
They are hilarious to listen to, because sometimes they're like, when I'm doing like drum beats with my teeth, so it's like nothing's changed since I was in kindergarten, Like for whatever they thought I was crazy then, like that's still the stuff going on in my head, and why I drove my sister crazy. She's like, Nathaniel, shut up. And I'd just be like, what? I'm not doing anything. Like, and just thought I was like totally entertaining myself. But yeah, there's like a playfulness to all that too, And then the playfulness, comes with other emotions as well. But yeah, that's fun. So I think I lost my train of thought.
No, I think everyone's following it.
Okay.
I'm just going to want to kind of keep on the mechanics of it though. So then, what do you compose with when you are taking those things in your head and putting them in? You start with a guitar? Is it piano?
Yeah, I'd say guitar is my primary instrument and my primary tool that I'm most comfortable with. But piano has been really great, and the more I understand it, It's even helped me with piano chords, and I feel like, you know, chord knowledge is important, or even voicing is important. Different tunings are fun, but I was like reluctant to do that for a long time because it was so trendy, and so many friends of mine in the Americana world were like, another song in open D, and I was like, fuck open D, but I'm gonna play a song later in open D. So because our producer Brad was like, you ever do anything in open D? I was like, that's fucking hilarious. I was like, I've intentionally avoided that key, that tuning forever, but it's a great tuning. It works great. So anyhow, but the piano is helpful, and I want to use other instrumentation. You know, I can sit and play drums and sing, but that is not the best way to like create a song for me either. So I think having some structure, whether it's guitar or piano, even if the chords change or the chord voicings change, there's enough structure there that I can then, there's a basis of communication with other musicians and even a producer if I'm not working alone. And you kind of need that stuff. Like language, like I don't really speak music language, and I don't know music theory. So I don't even know like the Nashville number system very well. But I've been trying to focus on that a little bit more without it being a distraction. But I do find it's a helpful tool to be able to communicate with other players who that's the only way they speak in their musical language. And even in terms of like, I'm not an engineer. Like I can't run Pro Tools. I can run a tape recorder, but you know, or GarageBand. And I can look at a Pro Tools session and the WAV files and be like, no, I don't want that. Like this needs to change right here. So I can look at the WAV files and be able to communicate that way, but I can't sit down and make the edits and all the things I want. I can just tell somebody how to do it. So, you know, but it was important to learn what all that looked like, and even like know plugins and things and effects or microphones. Some of that is developed through taste. Some of that's developed through producers I've worked with, you know, and I think each time I work with somebody else, it's an opportunity to learn their method, and I incorporate those things, you know. And the interesting thing with working with a producer is there's like, the way I always say is every producer has their own theology about recording, and you kind of have to buy into that theology in order for that relationship to work. You have to like become a part of that cult for that record cycle, for that record recording session, in order for it all to really feel like there's good energy and flow. Because if you're resistant to the way they want to do things, you're just going to be fighting each other the whole time, you know? And so you can have, you know, I like to work with people that at least hear me. Because I've been in the room with producers and engineers who don't give a shit about what my idea is, but it's important for me to be heard and chase down that idea, and then I'm happy to throw it away. But I want to pursue that initial idea, and that kind of even goes with like the structure or the melody or the lyrics or instrumentation. I think it's great to throw as much as you can at the canvas. And then there always becomes a point where you're like, what needs to be, like, mute everything and start putting things back in. And that can be, like, whether it's mixing. But I love to be a part of the mixing process. It baffles me when people is like, yeah, we sent it off to so-and-so to mix. I was like, you weren't fucking there? I was like, no. Because, you know, people are like, don't worry about the little details. It's all in the little details. You know, it's all in the little details. And what makes art, and you know, when people were like, they were brilliant. Well, if they were brilliant, it's because they were pretty highly focused on every little detail. You know what I mean? And so I think those things are important, and just don't listen to anybody that says otherwise, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. That's great. Well, you were just talking about collaborations and working. Yeah. I mean, music, I think the making of music and putting an album together, there's so many people who are a part of it. What is it like to write with someone? I know you don't have a lot of co-writes on your music, but you do write with other people, right?
I really do enjoy it, and I just had, I'm the primary writer for the Night Sweats, and We have one song that I did with Mark Schusterman, our piano player. It was his song, and it really just like it was a song already. And I just thought like the melody can change here. What if we do this? And like changed a couple of lines, sang it slightly differently. But you know, I think I got a writing credit on it. But that wasn't really the focus, you know. And it was more exciting for me to see Mark's joy of everybody kind of like celebrating his song instead of it just being about, it's always about me, you know. But it felt like, you know, he knew he was contributing something, and it was just exciting to see it come into fruition, to start as an idea. And that's the most exciting thing about songwriting, is that it comes from nothing and then becomes this big soundscape, you know. And then recently I've been working with some other artists, and I love the idea of helping produce and working with people. And so I worked with a young band, and the idea was for me to co-write a song with the lead singer. And he was sending me these fantastic voice memos. And my producer, Brad Cook, he was telling me how much he loves these early recordings, and I was telling you this earlier. But it was exciting for me to have that experience with another writer, where these like pretty raw forms all over the place, tempo change, like, you know, and he had like 3 different ideas, and I was like, okay, this is great. And you know, originally I was going to help him finish the writing of it, but by the time we got to the studio in LA, he had pretty much finished everything. And so then I was just like, okay, you got like 3 songs. We need to make this like a great song, or like the best song it can be. And I think that's the idea, is to always serve the song. Like, it's not about me, it's not about him. Like, it's a collaboration of all of us together to make sure that this song gets the chance to live that it needs to. So by the end, I hardly did anything of actual writing. It was more like we just sat there and played it together and talked about the structure. And I think I changed like 1 line, you know. But I feel like a lot of times in those situations, I see producers and other people, they're really pushing to make sure that they get a writing credit. And I think that can be a little predatory sometimes. My focus is not for it to be a writing credit. If I don't get one, because that happened with another artist where I did help write something, and they didn't give me a credit, and I was just like, well, that's a bummer, but I don't really feel like the song is So I was like, yeah, so I was like, I don't necessarily need my name attached to it. And, you know, like, I just don't really care about causing a big stink for this, like, mediocre song. So, you know, I was like, let them have it, fucking whatever. But, you know, I think the importance is, like I said before, is like, serve the song. It's not about me, or if you're the writer, making sure that you get the acknowledgement. It's about the overall growth between all of you, you know.
Yeah, and it sounded like, too, that in that example that your role was to be the hearer of the other person's idea in the way you were just describing earlier. And maybe sometimes collaborating is part being a therapist. It's just sort of playing along with the other person. And
I mean, the producer's role is a therapist. It's terrible. I couldn't imagine. I mean, you have to go in, especially with a band like ours, there's 8 different people, you know. And so there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of attitudes, there's egos, there's people that need to be seen or taken care of, or and so there's like a little bit of babysitting involved for the producer. And at the same time, I'm going to them like, yo, I don't like this at all, but I'm not going to say anything. You know, like, so you go, you know, because in times where I've produced, when it was like leaning more on me to produce the band, I just feel like I end up being the bad guy, and I need a producer to throw under the bus, honestly. So, otherwise I'm throwing myself under there, and then it just causes conflict and friction between us, and like it's really about the path of least resistance to get the song done, you know, and for everybody to feel like, you know, even when Brad and I first working with, like when we brought him on to help finish The Future, he was like, what is your goal? Like, what do you want? Like, what do you want in terms of wrapping this up? Like, what's the goal for this record? And I was like, I need everybody to feel like Like, I want everybody to listen back to this record and play it for somebody they care about their opinion, and be like, I did this right here. This is my part. This is the thing that I contributed to this. And I felt like Brad did a really wonderful job of helping everybody in the band feel seen and heard. And up to that point, I think I was just like, yeah, that sounds good. Let me play it. I can do it better. You know, and I don't think that's like, and even if I can do that, I don't think that's always like the best way to finish the song, you know, and like let somebody else play it and let them have a moment to shine, and just like I just kind of like suck it up, and you know, you can always be like, play it a little more like this or do a little bit more like this. You can always have direction, and encourage people to like to challenge themselves to play differently, or you know, be excited about what they're playing instead of being discouraging and being like, I can do that better, you know. Even if I don't say that, you know, but my actions do, you know. And I think those are certainly speak louder than my words a lot of time, because I can be a pretty big presence in the studio. So,
right, fascinating. I want to take you back to the self-titled record, which came out in 2015. So many incredible songs that broke through and propelled you in your career and the band's career. What were your memories of some of the songs, some of the writing? Can we just take one, like Son of a Bitch?
Okay, that's
Let's
a great
talk
one.
about that.
So the whole project started is like, I was kind of on the verge of just, like, in between touring, I was a fine gardener and landscaper. And I really enjoyed that work, and I could have continued to do it, you know. And so I kind of got to this point where I was like, I can't keep going to Europe and like playing for 200 or 150 people. And it was just a slog, and it had been for a long time, for years. And so, I don't know, I had always kind of, I like my heart and like everything that I loved was like Stax Records and the band. And I was just like, what if I did something that, like, I started off with a song that just sounded, I was like, what if it was like the band backing up Sam and Dave? And I wrote a song called Trying So Hard Not to Know, based off of a cover version I've done of Shape I'm In. So I took the rhythm I was doing in that, which isn't the way they did the Shape I'm In, and then structured a song off of this rhythm. And with that song, I kind of cracked the code for me as to how I wanted to write in that genre. And so I ended up, like, pretty quickly within a weekend I wrote that song, and then I wrote Look at Here, then I wrote I Need Never Get Old. And then based off of, like, the idea of a Willie Dixon song, we always used to listen to the Howlin' Wolf version live in London, or not the live in London, but the London sessions, Wang Dang Doodle. So these, like, kind of describing this party, I was like, that would be fun. Like, not every song's got to be, like, fucking heavy bullshit. So, you know, I wrote this song called Howlin' at Nothing, kind of thinking about that Howlin' Wolf tune, about the Willie Dixon song too. So, I think Coco Taylor has a badass version of that too, right? Yeah. So, and then it just kind of started piling up, and then I was like, you know, and you know, as a kid, I loved blues and R&B, so all that stuff was like kind of coming back. And then with that, like, I essentially agreed to play a show without a band. I was like hanging out at the High Dive down the street, or Sputnik, and like having lunch, and I just like had my iPod with, you know, the old corded ear pods, or whatever those things are called. And I was just playing people these demos, and a friend, I played it for a friend, and he was like, dude, this is amazing. He's like, you want to open up? I was like, yeah. He's like, I got a record release. Well, that was Joe from The Fray. He was putting out his first solo record and playing it at the Bluebird. And I was like, yeah, I can play a show. I had no band, not enough material. So I put together like kind of the usual suspects. I actually asked a lot of lady friends that I had at the time who were in other bands if they wanted to play, because that was my initial idea, was to have like me in a full backing band of ladies. But I ended up with the same fucking dudes I always do, you know. So, well, you can't get away from your family, and I'm so blessed to have them. But so we put together this band, and we were kind of jamming, and I had this like this melody in my head, the whoa whoa whoas, and I was really just kind of joking at the success of other friends had had on Haze and Hose and whoa whoa whoas and all the things, you know. And I was like, people love to sing that shit. And I was like, we'll just do like a whoa whoa, you know. And I structured the song in a way that it was just basically like, we'll have a verse, and we'll have a crazy chorus, and if we don't know what to do, we'll just like call and response with the audience, whoa, whoa, whoa. And we did it at the Bluebird, and really it was just a way to eat up the 35 minutes of time we had, because I only had like 5 or 6 songs, and then we had SOB, and so we had jammed on it in my attic, which literally there's a chimney in the middle of the practice space, so we're just playing around it. Yeah, then when we played it live, I just danced for no reason, and people flipped out, and I was like, what have I been doing all these years? I've been like pouring my heart out to people who's like, you know, playing the Mohawk Club and fucking, yeah. You know, and so I don't know, it was like a total fluke. And the structure of that song was just like, I would have never guessed in a million years that song would have bought me a house. So, you know, and you know, it's like, thank you. And, you know, it bought my mom a house, and that's what really mattered to me. She got her house before I got my own. So, but, you know, yeah, like I said, you'd never know what the audience is going to like. And in terms of my writing, I feel like this is the worst song I've written. But hey, you know, whatever. It's like I said, I've written way worse songs. I know it. The Pizza Party is not as good as SOB. Or Falling Pots, that was another early one. So, but, you know, I think, and that just goes to show that, like, you can't write for your audience. You have to write for you. And even though I was writing for myself at that time, and I was making light of a pretty intense situation of me having delirium tremors, and, you know, having withdrawals from abruptly quitting drinking. And then, you know, that song has given me an opportunity to share with other people that have come to me and said, like, this song has, like, created space in our family to talk about, you know, the substance abuse and alcoholism we've had between our parents, or, you know, so-and-so died this year. And so whether I think that's my best writing or not, the song has served me and a greater audience. And once you put a song into the world, it's no longer yours. You're giving it over, you know. And so I gave that away, and it has come back tenfold of whatever labor I put into that song, and I feel blessed to have written it. So
yeah, bravo. You brought that up. I wanted to ask you, because you've talked about sobriety and sort of challenges related to that. Where does that fit into the songwriting and the creative process for you, or does that tension drive sort of the creative process for you? Is it a hindrance? Is it both?
I think it's both. There's I would say, like, writing when you're drunk, or recording when you're drunk, it's never as good as you think it is. You know, there's some other substances out there that really increase the idea how good you are, but they're just fooling you. I find that the clearest head is the best head for me creatively. And even when I was a heavy drinker, I would do a lot of my writings first thing in the morning after, you know, like, sit with coffee, and you, like, just kind of that first initial part of your day, I feel most in touch with the thing that's outside of us. But yeah, I think there is a thing that happens when you drink a lot, or you know, partaking in substances, that you have a lot of upswings and downswings, and within those emotional swings, you have these, like, such high moments, like, so euphoric, and those can be wild and radically creative. But you'll never finish an idea right then. You got to come back and wrap it up. But there is a consistency, you know. And I had a friend who'd been sober for a while, and he's like, you know, after a while, he's like, you don't have the mountain peaks, but you don't have the super low valleys. And he's like, there's a base level joy, and you can get used to that, and you can live in that, you know. And I think more and more I find more joy in trying to find that base level joy, and you miss those wild moments. But everybody knows I'm capable of that, and I don't need to prove it to anybody anymore. You know, like, and I had another friend tell me recently that, you know, the drunk saved him. That person who was the drunk saved him. But it took him a while to recognize that that's his, like, inner shaman. He's this wild man, and, like, you can connect to that in other ways, and I'm trying to figure that out now. And I'm not, like, a forever sober person. I think it's, like, I haven't drank this whole last tour, so over a month now. But it was just because I'm busy, and I don't find it to be, it's not helping me. And so if it's not benefiting me, I was talking to my partner today about this. It's like, there are appropriate times to celebrate, but I used to like to celebrate all the time, you know, like, and then, you know, you can always find a reason. So, like, damn, this breakfast is good. So, but yeah, you know, I think there's a way around that, and I think there is this thing that I think is a pretty big pitfall for a lot of young people and a lot of writers, that, like, what am I without my struggle? Like, what am I without my pain? What am I without this cocktail, or without this substance, you know? Like, or, you know, even people that are, like, continually tripping all the time. It's like, what are you looking for, man? It's all right here. It's here, you know? And, like, and I think that, you know, finding the base level joy and the consistency in that has have so much more longevity than the peaks and the valleys and the experiences that happen or are crazy. And we've had some fun, crazy times, but, you know, we just got lucky that we didn't get in trouble for any of it. So, you know, I mean, I did get arrested last year, but yeah, it was for speeding. So, but anyhow, anyhow.
I'm sticking with the creative process.
Yeah,
and the is it harder to carve out time to write songs now that your career is in the place that it is and your life is in the place that it is? Do you have to sort of block time to sit with your coffee and write, or is it still inspiration striking you in those moments like Tom Waits on the freeway?
Well, I still have the moments of inspiration, and I try to capture those moments the best I can, whether it's in voice memo form, or even the other day, we had a show in Raleigh, North Carolina. Brad lives in Durham. I popped by to sing on a record he was making, and I was like, I got this idea, and he just put a mic in front of me, and I played the idea that I had. Half of it I had already written the other morning, and so I'll keep that, and now that's a great reference point for me to go back, because he even had like a melody suggestion. He's like, what if you did this, you know? So I keep all that stuff, and I keep all the voice memos, but I do have to actually carve out real time. It has to be like scheduled, and then you just have to fucking hope that thing shows up, you know? But there is something like being studious and like working at your craft every day is important, you know? Like sitting down, like I like to just play every day, but in terms of writing, you can sit down and write and just like nothing, you know? And then this happens a lot. I'll like spend an entire day by myself trying to write, and then like, I didn't have anything happen today, and then sit on the couch and start watching TV, and it's be like, and then I'm like back. Then I just leave whatever I'm doing, and that can be a little disruptive sometimes when you have, you know, your family in the house. So, but I'm still blessed that my partner lets me walk around and hum and sing and do all the weird things that I do anyway. So
it doesn't annoy her the way, or your partner the way it did your sister.
Probably does sometimes.
You have a new record out. Tell me about, or tell us about some of the songs that are on that. South of Here.
Yeah.
Which I hope you're going to play for us in a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to play that one actually. Right. So that originally wasn't the title track. The title track was going to be "Time Makes Fools of Us All," which is the last song on the record. And when I first started writing, when I sat down, I had like there was like 2 sessions that happened. First, I went to Brad Cook's house to just kind of, it wasn't really about making a record. It was about organizing all the ideas that I had collected. So we kind of scraped through 50-something different ideas. pardon me, in all sorts of, a lot of like weird stuff and a lot of like half-finished songs. I was there for 10 days and walked away with about 8 songs. And that was kind of the start of the record, but that was not the intention. And then after that, I took some time in March. I had another 10 days. And I blew my first 3 days trying to get my recording set up at home working, which was pretty frustrating. But in the remaining days, I wrote like 7 to 8 more songs. And so I was at a pretty good clip. But whatever it is, it's like that thing. Once you kind of get yourself in the flow, and I get myself in the work mode, like I show up, and so does that other thing. And I feel blessed to have that. But it was really like I just feel like I've been in this place in my life. And I feel blessed that I'm a place in my career where I have a song like SOB that gives me the creative license to write songs like South of Here or The Center of Me, that I now have an audience that's going to listen to that.
Because those were more sort of the style of songs you started off writing.
And I think ever since I did, and It's Still All Right, the solo record I put out, my love, like what I search for as songwriters, even like it's kind of, I like singer-songwriters. I like kind of mellow, chill shit. And so it's hard for me not to lean into that all the time stylistically to write. And so like I said earlier, try not to write to your audience, but I know there's what the Night Sweats are and what we're known for, there is an expectation for us to deliver a certain type of show. So I continue to try to do that, but I'm also still trying to create other moments in the show, and so like when you're creating a record, I'm also like, oh, this song will be great in the set, like right here next to this song off this record, and those things are like fun and exciting for me to try to like how that all works and how you present that to an audience and the theater side of it, I guess, the theatrical side of it. But anyhow, South of Here, that was a really long way to get to that. That was a song I was going to write with Courtney Marie Andrews, and that song started off as I was putting away this Martin that I don't normally play. I was just kind of strumming the shit out of it, and I was like, damn, that sounds good. And out of my mouth just came, and I would have to move away. And I was like, huh, all right. I was like, maybe South of Here, let us be. I was like, all right. And then that song kind of went everywhere. And I was at a birthday party for a whole like 4 or 5 days in Santa Fe. Courtney was there, and I was like, hey, I got this song. I hear your voice. We should write it together. Because I'm excited. I want to work with other writers, and I want to be challenged. I want to be the idiot in the room. Like I want to be pushed in a way outside of my comfort zone. And I think like I really appreciate her as a writer, and I feel like she could have contributed to this song. But kind of like the earlier thing I said with the other band, I ended up writing it before I could get back to her. And we never, that weekend, it wasn't going to happen. But I think that song was just, it really is like, how do you, in order to figure out where you're at now, sometimes you have to like look back and see where you came from. And I think there's when I do records, there is a thread that kind of runs through all the songs. And so on this record, some of like Luke, our guitar player, he was like, why didn't this song make it on a record? He's like, it's my favorite song we've ever done. I was like, it just contextually didn't fit. It didn't have the thread that all the other songs did. And I felt like the thread was about me moving here and like what it meant to leave poverty and what it's like to live in poverty and not be able to have any other perspective on the world. And to, and so like there's a lot of that in the songs. There's a lot of like what I would like to think that I feel like blessed to be where I'm at now from where we came from. And yeah, that song just kind of, it was a tough song. It was one of the last songs I did. We had already recorded the record, and Brad and I had to go back to El Paso to work with the horns to do more horn arrangements. And I wrote Center of Me and South of Here. I finished those there, and I feel like those were important tracks that had the thread that I wanted for the record, and they were like last minute additions. And the hilarious thing is like out of nowhere, then my band is like, they're wrapping up, the record's great, they're stoked, and then I send 2 new songs like, hey, track this weekend, you know. And then I remember Luke, my guitar player, he was like in between houses, and he was like staying with his brother. And he just told me, he's like, man, he's like, you sent me this song, and he's like, he studied jazz, so he's like, the structure of this thing is just crazy. He's like, I don't know. He had like a full meltdown about it, and like went into his brother's working at home, and he walks in and he's like, man. His brother's like, what? He's like, I just can't figure this out. It's like fucking crazy, the structure. His brother's like trading stocks or something. He's like, you know, the life of a musician. He's like having a hard time figuring out the chord structure. So yeah, it was such a dilemma, but I think it's hilarious that he like got so hung up on it. But it was also fun to surprise my band with 2 songs that I felt were important, and I really don't know what they think about it. They were probably irritated by it, but
we are coming up towards the end of this, but I wanted to just go the thread, you know, at what point does that reveal itself to you? Do you start writing with that idea, or do you reflect on like these 6 or 8 songs you first wrote and went, dang, there's a thread here, let me pull on that a bit?
Yeah, no, I don't recognize it at first, and sometimes I don't even recognize what the topic of the song is until I can look back and reflect on it lyrically. And then sometimes it really gets you in a moment. You're like, shit, I didn't know I was talking about that, you know, and like it surprises myself. So I feel like there's a lot that the subconscious does that you're unaware of, and it inserts itself into what you do creatively.
Yeah.
So and so I think that thread kind of started when I was at Brad's house, and there was this song that I was working on that we finished there called "I Would Like to Heal," and I think that was the start of the thread. And then from there, just more of that kind of came. Remember, I was a dancer. It was another song I was going to share with you all tonight. It was a special one to me. And yeah, and then that thread slowly becomes revealed. And then it's helpful for me to actually finish some of the songs that I struggle with lyrically and be like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is my overall theme. And I think I was saying that too earlier. Sometimes with the start of a song, there could be a line or a stanza or even a title that kind of is the basis of what the song is going to be about. And so that would be the same thing with this record. Like all of a sudden it has like a theme. And I think sometimes it's like the band doesn't even know. And I'm just not like, this album's going to be about this, guys. You know, like, I just really need to express this about what my life's journey has been. Nothing like that at all. It's really just kind of happens. And then sometimes pretty dumbfounded that that's what I'm talking about. And it's pretty cathartic, you know.
I bet. Before we finish up, you and your team and the Newport Folk Festival made some news today.
Yeah.
Why don't you share it with everybody here?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm stepping in to help curate, and it's a new stewardship program. I'm the first artist to be a part of Newport curation since Pete Seeger, and to me, it's a thank you. So I hold the position with a lot of reverence, and Newport has been a safe place for people to speak their voice and to be heard and seen, and I want to continue to cultivate that in that spirit, in that light, and continue to make it a safe place for the people that need to be, you know, have a place to have their voices heard. And I think it's a great place for people to be discovered. The community that is there from the moment I walked in, like I always loved the idea of Newport, and for years I was like, even as a singer-songwriter, I was like, I play fucking folk. Why am I not invited to this thing? And I remember, like, you know, when I finally met Jay, it was like some show on the Santa Monica Pier, and it was a pretty terrible day for me. I never thought our relationship would end up here. But I'm excited to step in, and, you know, I have a lot of relationships with other musicians, and it's been fun to reach out and be like, I really feel it's important for you to be here. This is what we're doing. This is a nonprofit, you know, and yeah, I want to see it grow, and I want to see, you know, lifelong friendships and relationships build and come out of people's experiences at Newport. And it's just like this last year was one of the best years I've ever been to, and there was some really big acts, but it wasn't like, one year it was like we did a thing for Paul Simon. He had never played Newport, and then Joni Mitchell had a fantastic show as well. It was the first time she sang and played in years, and to be a part of that, that was like a crazy year. But last year was like beautiful and crazy, and there was just so many young artists, and it was great to see their excitement. And I want to be there to like be available to talk about the pitfalls and the things that I've stumbled into and failed at, because those were hard learning experiences for me. And if I could save somebody a portion of their journey and a portion of those failures, it would be a blessing for me to have fallen on my face, at that one point. So.
That's incredible, and it really is an incredible testament. I mean, to be in the same sort of sentence as Pete Seeger. We all listen to music on streaming services now for the most part. And, when you listen and you love an artist and you listen to them all the time, the streaming service will say, here's some recommendations of people who are like that, or similar artists. Spotify is stumped with you. That area is just blank for me because there's no artist like you. There isn't. And your sound, your style, your heart, your music, you're one of a kind. Folk Festival is lucky to have you. Thank you for tonight.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for tonight, and we're looking forward to you playing a couple songs.
Oh, thanks so much. It's a really pleasure to talk to you all, and thanks for letting me out.